Join us at Women of Courage and celebrate the achievements of women. In the upcoming months, I am going to change our format significantly. This year, we will exhaust three subjects: breast cancer in black women, voting, and the subjects for black men. Each of these ideas and subjects is essential for the black community. Our survival depends on the health of black women, our willingness to vote, no matter what, and the fortitude and determination of black males to develop. We might as well face it, the survival of any community depends on the mental and physical health of both the female and male. Children need both their father and mothers, and the community needs happy, substantial families to survive. No culture can survive without either. I want you to join me in our discussions. I want women to realize that the survival of their children is the only proof that they ever existed. Think about what I just said. Your children are the only proof that you ever existed on this earth. So when you are careless about your health and die before your time, the survival of your children is greatly reduced because they will be placed in foster care where they can be abused mentally and physically. I want men to join in learning about breast cancer and try to save the lives of their mothers, sisters, aunts, cousins, and grandmothers. I want men to begin to listen to subjects that can greatly improve their lives. I am going to play certain speeches regarding the need to vote. There will be speeches of Obama, Stacey Abrams, and others. I am also going to discuss Shirley Chisholm, Constance Baker Motley. She is the first African American woman to ever become a federal judge. All in all, I hope you will enjoy the new format and be greatly encouraged in your life. Also, thank you for listening and growing with us. The Women of Courage show is being broadcast by the Women and Children's Restoration Ministries to help you problem solve, to help you dream again, to help you believe that anything is possible. We want you to believe that you do not have to marry the first man you meet just to get someone to take care of you. You do not have to live a life of drudgery. You can educate yourself. All you have to do is learn to read competently. We want you to take a chance on yourself. Stop believing all the soothsayers around you that have never left a state in their lives. People who do not have courage to fly. People who only think of lying, cheating, and stealing. You can live an exciting life. All you have to do is believe that you can make your dreams come true. You do not have to go to bed with someone you despise day in and day out. You have the right to marry someone that you can talk to someone that believes in you and has faith in you as a human being. In other words, you do not have to settle for just anyone. But what you must do is strive toward your goal. You must be goal oriented. You must organize yourself. You must be clear about what you want in life and why you want such a life. All of us are made up of dreams. As our dreams unfold in our lives, our spirit soars. Realizing our dreams becomes a problem because oftentimes we are beaten down by our friends and family. We are beaten down at school by people laughing at us because of our shoe size, our ear size, our breast size, the clothes we wear, etc. We are beaten down by people saying nothing will come of our lives. We are beaten down when our mothers and grandmothers constantly say that we're going to be just like our father, an inmate in prison. Many of us are also discouraged when our mothers are inattentive. She is wrapped up in her new boyfriend. But life anew is possible. It is my job to encourage you to go as far as you can dream and as far as your dreams can take you. It is my job to get you to believe in life again. I am sick and tired of people failing at life just because they are around negative speaking and negative acting people. Do not let the failure of other people make you lose confidence in yourself. Yes, you may be surrounded by poverty, but you must look for a way out. The book, If You Believe in God, You Do Not Belong in Prison, will help you. What you must do above all else is learn to read competently. You must read, and read. Anyone who laughs at you for reading, you need to leave that person alone. I do not care if it's your mother. Anyone who discourages you, you are to stop all association. Man is not different than plants. We need encouragement to grow as plants need water to thrive. You are to leave foolish, stupid people alone. Their ignorance will weigh you down or even get you killed. Sit down and think how you can avoid these people, especially if they're in your family. If you are overwhelmed with the tiring feeling that feels as if you're carrying a bag of stone around every morning when you get out of bed and think how you'll have to spend another living life you're not passionate about, the books I suggest are the perfect solution for your unique needs. Not only will we help you realize why these feelings overwhelm you and what you can do to change it, but they will also teach you how to live a life of strength, courage, fearlessness in order to realize all of your dreams. If you are lacking the attitude and psychology, proper resource or vision to make your dreams a reality, combined with dissatisfaction with the execution of your plans, but you remain firmly dedicated to making your ambition a reality and creating the life you deserve, you will certainly derive the most benefit from professional, incredible content within these books. Contents that will assist you in achieving the results that you are after. You are never to give up on yourself. Are you ready to leave your future to chance? Of course not. Take your life in your hand and learn all the necessary tools, mindset, strategies used by the men and women of courage, used in order to live the life of their dream. Change your life with our book starting today.
Major League Baseball caved to fear and lies from liberal activists. They ignored the facts of our new election integrity law, and they ignored the consequences of their decision on our local community. Georgians and all Americans should know what this decision means. It means cancel culture and partisan activists are coming for your business. They're coming for your game or event in your hometown. And they're coming to cancel everything from sports to how you make a living.
All right, that was Georgia Governor Brian Kemp on Saturday, lashing out at Major League Baseball for pulling the All-Star game out of Georgia after what he calls an inaccurate characterization of a new voting law that President Biden has called Jim Crow for the 21st century. Joining us now, Executive Director and founder of the Center for Election Innovation and Research, David Becker, and co-chairs of the Poor People's Campaign and president of Repairs of the Breach, Reverend William Barber. Good to have you both on board. So, David Becker, what would be a better way to characterize this law as we move forward, if you think there would be one?
Well, I think the Georgia law and many other laws that we're seeing being proposed in the states, first of all, we have to realize they're based on a fantasy, on the big lie that the election was somehow stolen, when in fact The election in 2020 was the most secure and transparent election we've ever had, with more accurate voter lists, more auditable and recountable paper ballots than ever before, more scrutiny of the election from the media and partisan poll observers and the courts than ever before. And I think that's why the Trump DOJ, FBI, and DHS all found that the election was in fact secure. When we're looking at laws like Georgia's, where we do see some limitations on the ability to request a mail ballot, some limitations on drop boxes, criminalization of providing food and water to people waiting in line. These are really troubling. I'm even more troubled, for instance, though, by laws that we're seeing in places like Texas, which was already starting from well behind where Georgia was in 2020. It was already hard to vote in Texas. It was already one of the least secure states in which to vote, and they're making it even harder to vote and less secure.
We'll get more into that in just a moment, but first, Reverend Barber, same question to you. I mean, what would be the best way to characterize this law if you think that the messaging could be edited a bit?
Yeah, I do, because this didn't just start now. You know, this is a trend that started after 2013 with the Shelby decision. I was a leader in the effort to beat back the worst voter suppression law after the Shelby decision. It took 4 years in court and 1,200 nonviolent protesters that got arrested. And what we found out is surgical racism and surgical suppression of poor and low-wealth voters. It's about racism, but not only racism. Voter suppression is an attack on our democracy. And we have to see this because the attacks are happening in Georgia and West Virginia, in Alabama and Alaska. And I was talking the other day to a white woman and a black woman in West Virginia, and this is what they said, Mika, they just don't want us to vote. And I said, us who? And they said, the us that believes in living wages, public education, health care, corporations paying their fair share and lifting from the bottom. So we have to have a way to show how this is an attack on democracy. And you know who said this more clearly than anybody? Dr. King. At the end of the Selma to Montgomery March, he said that every time there is a threat of the Negro and black masses to vote, you end up with this attempt to suppress the vote. And that's why we have to remember in this last election, 55% of poor and low-wealth voters voted for Biden-Harris, and 6 million more poor and low-wealth voters this time than in 2016. This is voter suppression, it's surgical racism and surgical suppression. It's not just racism alone.
David, as you say, there's been so much focus on the state of Georgia and all the controversy swirling there with Major League Baseball moving its All-Star game from Atlanta to Denver. But there's a lot going on across the country, and you're focused in on Texas and SB 7. What does that bill do?
So first of all, Texas started out as one of the states where it was hardest to request a mail ballot. You needed an excuse. It was hard to vote early. It's one of the few states that doesn't require paper ballots that can be audited and recounted, like we saw in Georgia, where the presidential ballots were counted 3 separate times, 3 separate ways. So it started out well behind many of the other states, and this law would make it even harder. It makes it difficult for local officials to try to make it easier for people to vote, as we saw in places like Harris County, Texas in 2020, where ingenious local officials tried to find ways to facilitate democracy, even in the face of the pandemic and Texas's already restrictive laws. So, for instance, it makes it very difficult to drop your ballot off. One of the things that really troubles me is if you have a disability, which is one of the few reasons you can use to request a mail ballot, you now need to actually get a note from your doctor before you go out and are able to request a mail ballot. It also empowers partisan poll watchers, and only partisan poll watchers, to go into the polling places, to basically roam wherever they want, possibly interfering with the process, and video voters as they're voting if they think something is fishy going on. In comparison, even the Georgia law says you can't do that. So this is actually unprecedented. It's something I'm really watching in Texas. The Texas House is now considering this bill, and we're going to have to see what happens.
David, what's the rationale given in Texas and in these states with all the restriction we've seen? What we've heard in Georgia is from Governor Kemp, we have to secure the elections. Now, as we pointed out every time we talk about this story, court after court after court stood up in the challenges to the election process and said, no, it was free and fair. Election security experts like Chris Krebs have said it was the most secure election in the history of our country. So what are we hearing from lawmakers proposing these laws?
Well, we hear the same claims of needing to secure the election, claims of election integrity. But the simple fact is, we have never had more secure elections in the United States than we do now. We're going to need to continue to build on security over time, but we're doing a really good job of that. For instance, one of the things that's a consensus recommendation that Georgia accepted and put in place for the first time in 2020 was paper ballots that could be audited and recounted. It was the first time in 2 decades that Georgia offered paper ballots statewide. Texas is one of the last states to have paper ballots statewide. And in fact, SB 7 in Texas would delay the rollout of paper ballots till 2026, making Texas likely the only state in the 2024 presidential election that doesn't have paper ballots.
Reverend Barber, Mike Barnacle's here with a question for you. Mike?
Oh, Mike, good morning.
Reverend, as you know, arguably there are 42 or 43 states all involved in voting laws, new voting laws on the books, studying new voting laws on the books. My question to you is, in Georgia and all of the rest of the states, including Texas that David was just talking about, there's been an effort in the media at some point in the past couple of weeks to sort of try and be even-handed in their approach and their coverage of specifically the Georgia law, saying, well, it's not quite as bad or as repressive as we first thought. So my question to you is, in Georgia and in all of the other states that you're covering in terms of these new potential voter laws, do any of them make voting easier, or do all of them make voting just a little bit harder for specific groups of people?
It's interesting. None of them make it easier. All of them make it harder. And any attempt to abridge the right to vote. We forget the 15th Amendment says you cannot not just deny the right, but abridge the right to vote. So what we should be doing is expanding. When we fought in North Carolina and won, by the way, they wanted to roll back same-day registration and early voting. What we are seeing is every attempt to suppress the vote, but it's surgical. It's surgical because they know they just need small percentages. And one of the things that we're saying in this moment, maybe we ought to call it Jim Crow Esquire, not just Jim Crow, because even if you say Jim Crow, you need to explain it's not just about black people. But what I think we need to do in this moment is that any attempt to suppress the vote is wrong. Now, in Georgia, people are calling on corporations to task, and that's right. But I want to suggest that what corporations really ought to do is stop backing the senators across this nation who have filibustered restoring the Voting Rights Act for 2,844 days today. Because if the Voting Rights Act was in place, none of these laws would make it through pre-clearance. We need that bill, the John Lewis bill, now. We needed to grandfather all these laws that are being pushed, and they need to be pre-cleared now. So what we need is litigation, we need this legislation, and we need corporations to stop supporting these senators that are filibustering, fixing the Voting Rights Act. It is atrocious that today in America we have less voting rights than we had in August of 1965 when the Voting Rights Act was first passed, because the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and gutted Section 5 in 2013. This will not just be won in state by state. It's a federal problem. We need federal laws. We need the litigation. And by the way, the litigation is going to have to do hard work to prove the surgical racism. It's not just going to be obvious. There's got to be a lot of data done to prove that it's surgical racism and surgical suppression of the disabled, women, young people, and so forth and so on, and the poor.
Reverend William Barber and David Becker, thank you both very much for coming on the show this morning. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.
I am going to pause for a second to take a short break while you listen to information regarding willpower and encouragement. It is all a matter of learning new behaviors. And please remember, it is easier to build strong minds than to repair injured people. What I said is a modification of a quote by Frederick Douglass. He said, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Now for my break. Hello, this is Minister Gloria Lee from the Women of Courage show. I want you to prepare to vote. That is correct. I want you to make up in your mind, come hell or high water, that you will vote in every election that is held in the state of Michigan, regardless of how long the voting lines are and regardless of the weather. Your vote is important. That is why you need to take some water with you and a small stool to sit on. Your vote will determine the property tax we pay, the car insurance that we pay, the housing that is available for seniors, the schools our children will attend. Your vote will determine the number of new job openings, the number of hospitals and hotels in our city. Your vote will determine the policies at our universities and the police force. Never assume that your vote does not count. Voting is the most essential activity that you will ever participate in your life. People have died so you can vote. Elections comes down to voter turnout, so stand in line and make your vote count. I would like for you now to listen to a short speech by John Lewis on voting. Listen to what he has to say and note the passion in his voice.
The Democratic National Convention has gavelled into session on this day 3, beginning about an hour ago. Let's go straight to the floor, where veteran Georgia Congressman and civil rights pioneer John Lewis is speaking.
Or do you want to keep America moving forward? My dear friends, your vote is precious, almost sacred. It is the most powerful non-violent tool we have to create a more perfect union. Not too long ago, people stood in unmovable lines. They had to pass a so-called literacy test, pay a poll tax. On one occasion, a man was asked to count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap. On another occasion, one was asked to count the jelly beans in a jar, all to keep them from casting their ballot. Today, it is unbelievable that there are Republican officials are trying to stop some people from voting. They're changing the rules, cutting polling hours and imposing a requirement intended to suppress the vote. The Republican leader in the Pennsylvania House even bragged that his state's new voter ID law is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state. That's not right, that's not fair, and that is not just. And similar efforts have been made in Texas, Ohio, Florida, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, and South Carolina. I've seen this before. I lived this before. Too many people struggled, suffered, and died to make it possible for every American to exercise their right to vote. Together to ever turn back. So Democrats, we must not be silent. We must stand up, and speak out. We must march to the polls like never, ever before. We must come together and exercise our sacred right. And together, on November 6th, we will re-elect the man who will lead America forward, President Barack Obama.
For the past 2 months, I have discussed breast cancer in Black women. Recently occurred to me that I had not heard from males in the area. Not one man had written or called me for information on breast cancer, nor has any male volunteered to help our breast cancer campaign. This caused me to wonder why. I hope the answer is not that males think breast cancer is a woman's issue. It's not. It's a family issue. It's a marriage issue. It's a community issue. It is an issue that concerns us all. The loss of one member of our community is devastating. Everyone is affected by the death, either directly or indirectly. The death of a parent can lead to angry children and devastated husbands. The death of a parent can lead a child to criminal behavior. Breast cancer is serious business, not just because of the death, but because of the aftermath, the horror breast cancer leaves behind. This is why, as a community, this disease must be fought at all costs by all of us. You have mothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and granddaughters, all at risk for breast cancer. Yes, women die of other diseases, but breast cancer is the most insidious disease of them all. I noticed I have not seen one man download the PDF file, Black Women and Breast Cancer, and send the file to any of his female relatives or friends for that matter. Why? You are concerned. So I would like for you to participate with me. Go to https://nisv.info and download the PDF file Black Women and Breast Cancer and send it to 5 of your friends. Also, please sit down and read the booklet. It's filled with information. One of the most important things about the disease is that we understand it. By understanding the disease, we can ask more informed questions of our doctors. Do you know how many people die or are injured each year because they take medication improperly? There is a reason why pharmacists insist on putting warning in our medication. This is why it's important that you learn to read. Medication errors are a problem with people who cannot read or are afraid to ask their doctor questions because they don't want to appear stupid. When you go in to see your doctor, it's not your job to try to impress him or her. You want their talents to impress you. So if you don't understand something, say so, and ask all the questions you need to feel comfortable taking your medicine or understanding your illness. The same with your pharmacist. Ask him or her questions until you feel comfortable taking your medication and you know how to take your medication properly. I received a medication in the mail. I did not know how to take it. I read the directions, but it was not clear to me how to take the medication properly. I was truly frustrated because I knew I was a competent reader. I drove down to the VA Medical Center and asked the pharmacist to show me how to take my medication. The pharmacist didn't say a word, but she came out, sat down, and demonstrated how I was to take my medication. And she discussed the actions the medication would have on my body. I left her knowing more than I did when I arrived. On another occasion, I received a phone call from a pharmacist, and she told me immediately to stop taking 2 of my medication because there was a contradiction. Both medications had been prescribed by doctors, but it was the pharmacist who noted that error. So don't feel stupid asking questions of your doctor or pharmacist. That is their job, to help you with the care of your body. This is why the booklet Black Women and Breast Cancer is so important. It's filled with information. The information is presented in such a way as to make you aware of what you did not know or understand. This awareness should prompt you to ask questions of your physician. All cancers are not the same. This is why family history is so important. The booklet was also written to let Black women know that their cancer can be more virulent and more progressive than others. The book was also written to inspire Black women to become more involved in the research of their particular breast cancer. Who's doing the research? Where is the research being conducted? And how is this research being funded? And by whom? I believe we can have a significant breakthrough with cancer if Black women become more aggressive in funding research. Join us to support our campaign by purchasing a book. See our advertisement. We have great gifts for men.
Well, as we've mentioned, Top General Mark Milley is apologizing and says he regrets participating in a recent photo op with President Trump at a historic church. Earlier this month, federal police used chemical agents to clear peaceful protesters near the White House as the president was escorted to St. John's Episcopal Church. He held up a Bible for 10 minutes and took photos. The move was met by criticism from many religious leaders. One person who has spoken out is the Reverend Dr. William Barber. He's the author of the book, We Are Called to Be a Movement, a challenge to bring change by coming together. He also leads the Poor People's Campaign, and he's also the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign and the president of the organization Repairers of the Breach. He joins me now. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
You recently you co-wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post about the president's photo op, calling his use of the Bible obscene. Why were you so offended by that?
Thank you so much. I actually wrote that op-ed with a dear friend of mine, Reverend Jonathan Hartgrove, who used to be a part of white evangelicalism and has since left it because he recognized that the focus was more about race than it was about the religion of Jesus Christ. What was so offensive and should be offensive to all people in this country is, first of all, the president using the military, using tear gas on nonviolent protesters. That harkens back to the days of George Wallace and Bull Connor. And then for him to argue that he is promoting law and order, again, that harkens back to Bull Connor and George Wallace, who said they were about law and order. Then he goes over to the church. He does not pray. He does not repent. He does not commit himself to the way of Jesus Christ, which is love and truth and taking care of the poor, the least of these, the hungry, the sick, and the immigrant. He does not commit himself to the ways of the prophets, commit himself to justice. Instead, he poses. That was a heretical form of public idolatry and narcissism. And to do that should be not only offensive, it should be deeply concerning, because there are other ministers around the country that actually endorsed him doing that, said it was okay. But remember, there were people who used the Bible to endorse slavery. There were people who used the Bible to endorse women not having the right to vote. There are people who used the Bible to endorse the genocide of Native people, and people who used the Bible to endorse Jim Crow. This president was highly out of order with the church and the ways of Jesus Christ.
The House, as you know, held a hearing today on COVID-19 and its impact on voting rights, and we've seen the virus's disproportionate impact on Black and brown communities. Are you concerned about people being able to safely vote?
Deeply concerned. First of all, before we ever had COVID-19, we had many legislatures, particularly in the South, engaged in racist voter suppression. The courts have called it surgical racism. I come from a state, we had a 6-year battle against surgical racism and through voting. We also know that ever since 2013, June 25th, 2013, 2,544 days ago, McConnell and Republicans have blocked fixing the Voting Rights Act. We know that states were already trying to suppress the vote. We know that Trump won Wisconsin in 2016 by 30,000 votes, but we know 250,000 votes were suppressed, according to a book entitled Give Us the Ballot. So now, in the midst of COVID, people having to risk their lives to exercise their right to vote. When we could change that is unjust. It is a violation of the 15th Amendment, a violation of equal protection under the law, and we should be deeply concerned. We see what happened in Georgia just the other day and Nevada. We see what happened earlier in other states. This should be concerning for us, and for Republicans not to be willing to join with Democrats and fix this problem means that they are just as much to blame as Trump. They're engaging in just as much racism as Trump, because voter suppression is about racism. It's targeted at Black people, but voter suppression undermines our democracy. And voter suppression also has what I call a DM, a death measurement. Because when people get elected through voter suppression, most of the time the people that get elected that way, they're against health care, they're against living wages. And when you deny health care and deny living wages, you actually cost people their lives.
I want to look ahead to June 20th. That is when you are hosting the Mass Poor People's Assembly and National Moral March on Washington. Now, the virtual event will focus on issues like police misconduct, poverty, and the coronavirus. How will a virtual march work, and what are you hoping to accomplish?
Well, actually, we had planned to have a Mass Poor People's Assembly Moral March on Washington in person on Pennsylvania Avenue, and then the coronavirus hit. Our focus is really on systemic racism in all of its forms: systemic poverty, ecological devastation, the war economy, and the false moral narrative, religious nationalism. We are building a moral fusion coalition: black, white, brown, red, yellow, people of faith, people not of faith, gay, straight, Jews, Muslims, Christians, all people coming together saying there are 5 interlocking injustices we have to address: systemic racism, systemic poverty, and we're showing this country that, for instance, there are 140 million poor and low wealth people in this country. That's 43% of this nation. 700 people die every day from poverty, 250,000 people a year. On June 20th, we sent out 50 million invites for America and around the world to come, not to hear me, but to hear white coal miners from Kentucky and white farmers from Kansas that are suffering through poverty, along with black people from Mississippi and Alabama, who will give their stories, who will tell their pain before COVID, during COVID, but will also offer up an agenda, because we must turn the marching in the street to a mandate for an agenda. They will lay out a budget, and they will declare that America has to address these 5 interlocking injustices. We have people like David Oyelowo, who played Martin Luther King in Selma, Erica Alexander, who used to play on Living Single, Vice President Gore, Jane Fonda, but they're not coming to speak. They are coming to introduce poor and low wealth people of every race, creed, and color who will tell their stories, make their demands, and say, we are going to lift our voices, show our faces, and we're building power, registering people to vote. Because we've done a study that shows if you register 15% of poor and low wealth people of every race, creed, and color around an agenda, they can fundamentally shift the politics in this country.
You're also giving a sermon this Sunday at the Washington National Cathedral, and the focus of your address will be about healing the nation. With all of the challenges facing our country today, how do we move toward and achieve that goal?
Well, the first thing is we have to face it. I think the hope is actually in the mourning we see in the street, that people are saying, listen, we can't continue this way. And not just around police violence. That's one part of racism. That's one part of the injustice. But denying health care causes death. Denying a living wages causes death. Poverty causes death. Ecological devastation causes death. Putting more money in the war economy than we do in helping lift up infrastructure and education and healthcare creates death. And so we have to face it. Secondly, we have to say it's not just Trump. We can't blame it all on him. He certainly is the tip of the spear, but anybody who has sat quietly, been calm, agreed with him, promoted his policies are just as guilty as he is. And then we must have the what I call the rejected, all of those who've been hurt by injustice and negative power. It's more of us than there are those doing it, and we must come together. But on Sunday, and I thank the Episcopal Bishop for allowing me to come to the National Cathedral, I'm going to preach America, accepting death is not an option anymore. We're going to have to put what I call a DM measurement, a death measurement, on every piece of public policy. And look at those public policy in terms not of Democrat, Republican, and left versus right, but life versus death. Life is the first declaration of this democracy: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if a bill or a policy causes death, if it causes death in disproportionate ways to anyone, then it is contrary to our deepest religious values and our deepest constitutional values. In fact, I would say it is morally indefensible, constitutionally inconsistent, and economically insane. And so what we're saying, I'm saying we have to deal with death. I'm going to talk about not in all of its form and declare life. What does life look like? Raise the living wage to $15 an hour, and 39 million of the 62 million people who make less than a living wage will come out of poverty. Provide health care for everyone. A health economy is a more a robust economy, provide life, provide the kind of voting rights we need, and we can elect people who will promote progressive policies and not regressive policy. America has a decision. Will we choose life or will we choose death? And the mourning in the street is actually the hope, because the mourning and the crying and the protest is telling us what we need to do and that the time to do it is right now.
Reverend Dr. William Barber, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. Really appreciate it.
God bless you, and thank you so much.
Hi, I decided that at the end of every show for the next year, I would share excerpts from a book that I believe would enhance your life and make you a stronger thinker and problem solver. All characteristics that will help you win at life and raise stronger and healthy children. Many of you turn your nose up at reading, or you snub the advice that you must read in life to succeed, or you compare the cost of a book to getting a new pair of shoes or getting your hair done or your nails done. The reason why you make these cost comparisons is because you do not truly value a book. A book is a magnificent instrument that can change the course of your life and the lives of your children. In later shows, I plan to discuss with you how a book changed the lives of certain people. I understand that you do not earn a lot of money, and this money is valuable to you because of all the things you see advertised that you desire, and you do not want to spend a lot of money on a book. A new pair of shoes is more valuable to you than a book. If you truly cannot afford a book, then you need to go to the library and take your children with you for a day of reading. You must gird your loins and proceed at educating yourself. Some of you seem to think that having a conversation with your stupid girlfriend or your stupid boyfriend will help you more than reading a book, when actually having a conversation with your loudmouth girlfriend or loudmouth boyfriend is merely a cathartic, allowing you to blow off steam and proclaim how life has been so unfair to you. What you do not realize is that the advice coming from your do-nothing girlfriend or your do-nothing boyfriend is advice coming from a fool. Your do-nothing girlfriend is a sexual opportunist looking for a man she can impress with her body. When her vagina fails her, what will your girlfriend do but go to work at McDonald's or Wendy's at the age of 60 and continue to spread her ignorance at church? Her daughter will be on the street and her son in prison. She will never realize that her life is the result of the decision she made not to educate herself through reading. All her life, she felt that she had something better to do than reading. She had something better to do than reading with her children. She had something better to do than working with her children. And that was going to the bar, trying to entertain a man, or trying to find some man that would buy her a pair of shoes. A man spending money on her was more important than educating herself. In later shows, I'm going to spend a great deal of time giving you some examples of fools. These are people who think they are smart, willing to trade their body and integrity for a dollar bill. These people end up in the cemetery after lamenting each and every day of their lives about their unfilled dreams. Do not be upset by the use of the word fool. You tell me if a woman is not a fool to instruct her grandson to kill her husband for a $25,000 life insurance. Let that sink in for a moment. Instead of instructing her grandson to make something of his life, the grandmother instructs her grandson to become a murderer, to kill his grandfather. I have this anecdotal advice for you about reading. Listen to this short true story. A friend and I were talking. She said a woman she knew called her and sought to renew their friendship. During their conversation, the woman told my friend that President Trump had done so much for black people, and that's why she voted for him in 2016, and she was going to vote for him again in the upcoming election. My friend asked her a question. She said, "Tell me some of the things that Trump has done for black people." The woman said, "A whole lot." My friend persisted and asked her to name one thing that Trump had done for black people. The woman could not. The woman kept using the phrase, "a whole lot of things." My friend said after a while she stopped talking. Finally, the conversation was over and my friend hung up. My friend said, as she hung up, she made up her mind right then that she would never renew her friendship with this woman. Now ask yourself why. Why would she not renew her friendship with this woman? You can answer this question in 2 words. The woman was a poor thinker. She never investigated anything that was told to her. Whether you know it or not, a person who is a poor thinker, who does not examine his or her thinking, is a very dangerous person indeed. Think about it.
Please take a moment to listen to these alarming statistics. According to a recent New York Times article, the U.S. suicide rate surged to a 30-year high in 2015. In fact, in the last 15 years alone, the suicide rate for girls aged 10 to 14 tripled. Middle-aged women saw a 63% increase, and for middle-aged men, the rate grew by 43%. These statistics are devastating. People of all ages and walks of life are unhappy, desperate, and without hope. And the problem is getting worse. My name is Gloria Lee, and I'm here to tell you that there is an answer. You are the prophet of your life. You can control your destiny and shape your future. You can live a better, more fulfilling life. You can change the course you're on. You Are the Prophet of Your Life is a new book that I've written and that I am glad to be able to share with you or anyone you know who may be personally suffering. Nobody needs to suffer in silence. This book will show you how to be the author of a new chapter in your life. It will show you what you need to do to be happy, successful, and sure of yourself and your future. I have found that it's in your darkest hours that you can discover your true self, the brilliant light within all of us that can never, ever be dimmed. You'll learn how to make informed decisions that will enrich your soul, enlighten your mind, and show you that you have the capacity to make permanent, positive changes in your life. You are the prophet of your life. Many of us live our lives, but few live their dreams. As prophets of our lives, we have the capacity. We can also attain our most lofty dreams. Ask yourself, do you want to have rewarding personal relationships? Do you want to run a successful business? Do you want to raise a beautiful, happy family? Whatever your dreams are, they are all possible if you have the roadmap, the set of instructions on how to achieve these goals. You have them now, and you are the prophet of your life. No one has to live a life of mediocrity, settling whatever comes their way. This book provides practical guidance on how you can move from just dreaming of having a better life into making it become your reality. Please join me in watching this short video on how you can realize that you really are the prophet of your life. Listen, negative thoughts interfere with the wonderful life you are meant to live. You are the prophet of your life. We'll show you how to live positively no matter what your current situation is. Don't let problems stand in your way of a happy and successful life. Learn how to overcome even the most difficult challenges you may face. Think of your life from today on as a new building in which you are the architect. You are the builder of the greatest life you can live. It's up to you to determine what course your life takes starting today. Because, my friend, you are truly the prophet of your life. Everyday life throws challenges at us, and it's how we choose to handle them that makes all the difference. You can decide the course of your life from today onward. Some of the key messages discussed in the book include being consistent in what you say and what you believe. A problem that most of us are guilty of is inconsistency. We are destined to fail when we allow negative thoughts and beliefs to impact what we say, not only to ourselves, but to others. Being inconsistent in one's beliefs translates to sowing seeds of doubt and unbelief. The famous saying is true that whatever you sow, you will reap. Always endeavor to be consistent in what you say and speak to others exuding faith, happiness, and wellness. Being pessimistic is dangerous. Do you get up in the morning telling yourself it's going to be a horrible day? No matter how bad your yesterday was, it should never stop you from being optimistic today. Being a pessimist is a recipe for suffering. It prevents you from seeing the positives in your life. You must realize that you're in control of what you think. Most importantly, positive thoughts lead to positive actions. The importance of reading scriptures. You don't need to believe in God to read scriptures. There are lessons that anyone can learn and gain inspiration from. Reading the Bible can help liberate you from negative thinking. God's words exude hope and positivity. God tells man that he can look forward to a great life by living righteously and not violating others. Nothing is as powerful as this. The need to investigate your emotions. Being the prophet of your life involves you being in control of your emotions. Investigating our emotions requires self-examination, which for some is painful. Most of us are scared to make mistakes, so we hesitate to make tough decisions. No matter how difficult investigating your emotions can be, you must never shy away from it. When you are not in touch with your emotions, you are destined to live a life out of control. You are the prophet of your life. If this book has a positive change on just one person's life and saves them from living a life of hopelessness and despair, then it will have been worth it to me. But I know the impact this way of life has already had on me, and my goal is to share the message with as many people suffering as possible. This book is for everyone. This is the story of your life, and you are its only writer. Let You Are the Prophet of Your Life be your companion to help guide you through life's obstacles. Let it be the beacon of light to awaken your best you. Order your copy now and live the life you've always wanted. We at Touched by the Light Publishing hope you enjoyed this presentation and that you realize that the only limitations in this life are the ones we put on ourselves. Order your copy now and get more copies to help someone you love at https://touchedbythelight.us. A revolutionary book destined to positively impact countless lives. A breath of fresh air in a world full of self-pity. Every parent should have a copy. Powerful, inspiring, outstanding. Finally, a book worth living by.
Congressman John Lewis is a living legend and an icon of the civil rights movement. A central focus of Lewis's activism has been the fight for the right to vote, a right that until 1965, generations of African Americans had been denied.
When John Lewis was a teenager, he read in a comic book about what Dr. King had been doing in Montgomery. And he went to his parents and he says, I want to be part of this.
By 1963, John Lewis had helped organize demonstrations and sit-ins across the South. When he was elected chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that same year, he became one of the Big Six leaders of the civil rights movement and helped plan the March on Washington. At age 23, Lewis was the youngest person to speak at the event. But his most defining moment came 2 years later, when he turned his attention to voting rights and helped lead a dangerous civil rights march from Selma to Montgomery.
John Lewis was on the front lines of the 50-mile march, starting in Selma to Montgomery, demonstrating the murder of Jimmy Lee Jackson, a young African-American who was killed by a state trooper, but also the denial of African-Americans' right to vote across the South. If they could get the nation to zero in on Selma, Alabama, a place that had a large black population and very few African-Americans who were registered to vote, then perhaps there could be some action.
As activists marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, state troopers tear-gassed and beat them on what came to be known as Bloody Sunday. Lewis himself was severely beaten, suffering a fractured skull. 8 days after Bloody Sunday, President Lyndon Baines Johnson introduced the Voting Rights Act in Congress, and he would sign it into law in August 1965.
Today, we strike away the last major shackle of those fierce and ancient bonds.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was written on the road from Selma to Montgomery. The government responded and reacted to the power of the people.
John Lewis has helped secure the right to vote for millions of Americans. He's been on the front lines of the fight for civil rights for over 50 years. And the last time I checked, he was still fighting.
Too many people struggled, suffered, and died to make it possible for every American to exercise their right to vote. And we have come too far together to ever turn back. We must stand up, and speak out.
Join us at the Women of Courage show every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. and every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. for information that will change your life. You can also visit us at our website, touchedbythelight.us, for more information.